Well, you get two city councilors here. I'm glad Kara Joy McKee's here as well, my predecessor. I'm Laura Bellis. I am your District 4 city councilor. I've been in office since December 5th, but I've been engaged with the city for several years, and I know I've introduced myself to some of you before. So it's been really great to get to hit the ground running with some of that prior experience, and then also being friends with Kara Joy, getting to ask her questions as well. I'm been able to just, get to work for you all. I know that Casey sent me ahead of time questions related to the city addressing housing and definitions of affordable housing. I'm going to go over that. And then there was also a handout. You can grab it on your way out if you don't have it, which is a draft. I want to emphasize that in case anyone has to leave before we get into that part, but a draft of the Improve Our Tulsa upcoming capital package, which I can describe more of what that is in a bit, as well as there's going to be some open house sessions with a variety of different city departments there, where you'll be able to ask questions and get more in-depth details and offer feedback, so that when that comes to the council to vote on, to be put onto the ballot for you all to vote on, your input will have been factored in. But I'll go over that in a bit. But to start with housing, so as I think everyone's fairly acutely aware, given the prevalence of homelessness in the community, the increase in housing prices, and so on, we're in a housing crisis, which is not unique to Tulsa, right? This is a national trend that so many cities across the country are dealing with, and there's so many contributing factors. Acknowledging that, the city is actively engaged in a task force right now, which I know that sounds like maybe nothing's happening, but the word task force always, I don't know, gives me pause, but there's a task force that is the Housing, Homelessness, and Mental Health Task Force that is meeting every week with key housing policy folks within the city, elected officials, nonprofits, businesses, etc., getting a full scope on the challenge, which Housing Solutions, which is our main kind of umbrella organization for housing work in the city, is just did a housing assessment, like a needs assessment study to go, what is the need, which it uncovered that there's the need for about, I think the number was $250 million a year invested into housing for the next 10 years to meet the need that we have. Now, when you hear that, that's a big number. What that looks like, though, is a pairing of public and private investment, which then means that the city has to do whatever it can to support people developing housing and rebuilding housing, right? If we have empty lots, we need to make sure that there's quality housing there. So the task force is currently digging through what are those strategic pieces. Simultaneously, we have, again, this capital package I'll go back into, and then also an opportunity to look at an array of things, whether it's federal dollars and state dollars, private dollars, and then also things within our zoning code. I'm actually tomorrow on the council agenda have a housing feasibility batch of zoning recommendations from the planning office I'm bringing forward, with the idea of how do we help make it easier for people to put in high quality housing, especially things like we have a lot of office space in and around the city where from the pandemic, more people working remotely, those spaces aren't being used. It's a national trend that a lot of cities are behind on renovating those spaces to become residential. This could be office space, hotels, etc. And so it's a few items to make that easier, as well as for additional dwelling units to be a bit more feasible in neighborhoods, especially historic ones such as Renaissance, and then also making it feasible for garage apartments to be 2 stories. That way you can put the apartment above the garage. Right now you would need a special exemption to do that. So just some things to make it easier, whether it's appropriate infill for a neighborhood or converting properties, etc. It's a batch of things to do that, which again isn't everything, but it will help. So when the city's thinking about affordable housing, there's lowercase affordable housing and uppercase affordable housing. Like capital A affordable housing is a definition that's used by state and federal programs, where this is housing, we're talking about Section 8 housing, housing authority sites, it's subsidized in some way and is designed based on and it's designed for folks based on the median income of an area and where definitions of poverty for them to specifically access that housing. The city's definitely, of course, working on that in partnership with the Housing Authority, HUD, right, on the federal level. And then the lowercase affordable housing is just what is legitimately affordable to all levels of income and family. Just because someone below the poverty level can't afford a house doesn't mean then that someone who's making, whether it's minimum wage or even a median income or even your kind of upper middle class, can afford a house. Because especially what's happened right now is with out-of-state buyers, Airbnbs, and so many other things, you have people then purchasing at a higher dollar amount properties that would have been affordable, and then it's driving up the price across the board. And so there's a lot of different layers of things to look at to make sure that there's housing that is affordable to all income levels, and we're basically short on all forms of housing stock right now. And so there's the need for a lot of that to happen, which higher income housing tends to happen more organically from developers. So where the city has to focus is more of your middle and low income housing and what the city can do to support and incentivize that happening. So those are the active conversations and revenue streams and things that the city is exploring to address the housing crisis. Separately, of course, there's a lot of cohesive work going on to talk about when we talk about homelessness and mental health, which of course we also need housing for those folks, right? Because once someone's in a house, they're not homeless anymore. That's good. But we have to, one, make sure that housing stock is there. And then of course, two, as a community, make sure there's those wraparound services. So I'll just pause there to see if people had questions related to affordable housing, what the city's working on. I wish I could tell you that there's really these very concrete step 1, step 2, step 3 plans. Though I'm not going to pretend that those exist, they don't. When the mayor had announced a big city investment, hey, we're going to make sure in the next 2 years that we're putting in $500 million into housing, that didn't come with a revenue stream attached to it directly. That was definitely an aspirational goal. So now, one, we know that we need even more money over the next 2 years for housing to meet the need. And two, it's really a matter of how do we make sure that it's as easy as possible for developers for all income level housing to actually make that investment. And that means then the city can meet them halfway on making sure that we have the infrastructure like streets, sewers, et cetera, for those properties to be built where they need to be. And then that we're easing the pathway for these things to happen again when it comes to appropriate infill. Asking about what it looks like, whether it's Habitat for Humanity and or tiny homes. We do have a Habitat for Humanity presence in the city, which does actively work to build housing, though not to the scale that's needed. And then there are 2 tiny home kind of villages that are actively working on going through the zoning process to be built. One is through City Lights, a nonprofit which they do Nightline Tulsa and a lot of work in our community with some direct service. And then the other one's called Eden Village. And so we are expecting to see those within the next about 2 years or so. So some of it will be when we talk about affordable housing and certain city programs are supporting that housing being built, they can then go, we'll help incentivize you to do this with either this much money or maybe putting in like a level of like a tax break through a TIF or whatever they can do, but you need to do this percent, say it's an apartment building, this percent of these have to be affordable housing based on this measure. So the city is not going to be able to pay for or even incentivize all the housing that's needed. But for certain projects, the city is able to come in that way and then incentivize that a certain amount of those properties are like capital A affordable housing, accept housing vouchers, et cetera. Because you all already have fairly dense, mostly single family units, there's no place for that to happen within your neighborhood. And your character overlay will also help with that.
Is there any consideration to limiting the number of luxury housing being built? Because during the pandemic, it seems like we've built tons of this luxury housing, and then the developers are all doing, oh, well, if you want me to build affordable housing, I need some subsidy.
Yeah, that gets into one of the biggest challenges is the feasibility side of things, where you have developers who want to build affordable housing, but it's not feasible for them just because of the cost that it actually takes to build. Yeah. Well, one of the challenges when we talk about some of this, there's not a ton of greenfield open land to go develop on in our city. Per your point, you can go find these spaces, and some of them are.
Or the city owns.
Yeah, even ones that the city owns. But here's what I'm going to say: there's not that many of those spaces. Where they do exist, then the issue is this is where we get into that kind of urban suburban sprawl, and that we don't necessarily then have all of the stormwater, sewer, all of those different elements and infrastructure that's needed then has to be built to go reach out into those area for housing to happen there. And then that's a lot more roads, et cetera, to maintain. This is going to take a multi-layer approach, and we're going to have to look at it from funding policy perspectives. Anything creative is fair game. On the plus side, since we're not alone in this being a challenge, and this is something cities, including ones of our size and ones within proximity to us, are dealing with across the nation, we're going to see creative solutions that we'll also get to learn from other places, and some of those already exist. But we are in that moment of where I think it's morally incumbent on us to engage with all possible and viable solutions. So I definitely appreciate any ideas folks have. Go to housingsolutionsTulsa.org. That's where you could, that needs assessment, and it has a really good breakdown. You can get all of that on that website, housingsolutionsTulsa.org. The solution to a lot of this isn't necessarily going to happen in the physical infrastructure of your neighborhood, but hopefully as the city works on this and is committed to this, it'll improve the overall conditions. And especially when we end up having to deal with downstream poverty, homelessness, all of those things are really expensive and take away from resources that could go towards some of your neighborhood infrastructure things you'd like to see. And so if we can upstream of these challenges, really get our hands around them and really improve housing and significantly reduce homelessness in our city, then we get to, as a city, spend less dollars combating those downstream challenges of people being homeless, crime, and so much else, and then devote more of those dollars to things like parks, which would be the goal and the dream. Some of that gets into what you brought up is when they look at people entering homelessness, one of the main drivers is some kind of like a disunion, whether it's with family, a domestic violence situation, or just, a breakup. And that's a lot of the driver of when people can no longer afford housing. And so that's part of the impetus where at the end of the day, we do need more affordable housing. And that does include multifamily units and apartments especially. So that's a really big push right now. I think a challenge, and I know that this is also something that, when we looked at the infill overlay that various neighborhoods didn't want to participate in, which I can understand for historical neighborhoods or neighborhoods where there's literally not even physical space for some of those multifamily units to go in. But we're going to really need to, especially as our city grows and we're going to have to add more density, and we're going to have to figure out where that housing goes because we need it. And it's important from an urban planning perspective that it is in proximity to our downtown where appropriate. Yes. I'm thankful that we have people who are some of these direct service providers in the room. Thank you for the work you all do. I'm going to just, maybe even for time reasons, just pivot into, because some of this will be more proximal directly to things happening in your neighborhood that improve our Tulsa package, which one I just want to mention, again, there is a draft. I should have probably printed that really big across the top, but it is a draft. But I'm just going to mention real quick the 3 town halls for that, and then I'll kind of get into the details of what the package is and some of the things in it as proposed that I think would be of interest to this neighborhood. But just so you all know, there are going to be 3 different open houses. You can go to any of them related to this Improve Our Tulsa package, where you'll have various city officials, people from different departments, etc., where you can go give feedback, get more information. The first one is April 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Union High School's Grand Atrium, which I can make sure these I have a graphic I can share and make sure it gets sent out after this. So that's April 24th, 6 to 8 at Union High School's Grand Atrium. Then there's one on the next night, April 25th, 6 to 8 at OU Tulsa's Schusterman Center. So that one's a little closer. So again, that's April 25th at OU Schusterman at 6 p.m. And then on May 1st from 6 to 8 is another one at the Greenwood Cultural Center, which I'm planning to go to the OU Schusterman one and Greenwood Cultural Center one, given their proximity to District 4. I can't make all three, but yeah.
What are these for?
These are for the Improve Our Tulsa package, which is a capital, it's an upcoming capital package that you all are going to get to vote on very likely August 8th. So what this is our city does a vision. These are tax packages that you all get to vote on when they come up. We have vision packages, which are really about investing in new and future things. And then the IoT Improve Our Tulsa package is more about maintenance and infrastructure and making sure we're improving the things that we have. And so these are investments in, again, usually physical infrastructure, like you're looking at streets, parks, city facilities and buildings, city-owned properties. And so within this package, I just wanted to highlight a few things. And again, this is not done. There's space for impact. And certain parts of it aren't 100% fleshed out. On the back, you can actually see, and this map's available online, and it's interactive and super helpful, what was passed in prior capital packages for street repairs. So that way you can, and when you go on the website for the prior Improve Our Tulsa packages, you can hover over different upcoming street projects and see what date it's expected, if they have contractors scheduled for it, and so on. One of the things that's at the top of this capital package is that because of inflation, there's funds needed to be able to finish what was promised from the prior capital packages. And then there are more dollars for more street rehabilitation, street widening, bridge replacements, sidewalks, ADA accessibility, right? And that includes some parts of sidewalks as well, of course, and other general construction. You'll even notice it says alleys, which is very exciting if you have any back alleys. But just wanted to share, when we're looking at these street projects, I don't have no one on the council does, and I don't believe I've seen one from the mayor's office. There's not a list of what streets that all includes, especially for the dollars for new projects. So I wanted to make sure you all know that, and I know you have some key streets of concern. I know someone was talking about Delaware with me earlier. This is definitely an opportunity to make sure and advocate for some of the things you'd really like to see when we talk about streets and sidewalks. And there's different ways that the city prioritizes those projects based on need. How much in disrepair is that road? If it's when it comes to sidewalks, there's different criteria. For instance, if someone has a physical disability and needs those sidewalks to be upgraded so they can get to core things within the community, then that can get a sidewalk moved much higher up on a list. A lot of the streets you may be concerned about are likely on the capital improvement list already. There's just a long queue, but it never hurts to advocate or help identify the street projects you'd like to see. So I want to call those to your attention. You'll see a lot of this has to do with other city-owned properties, various things downtown. The city, is responsible for the BOK Center, the Performing Arts Center, various parks, which we have a few, actually a key one in District 4 that's being finished is Swan Lake's Fountain, which has been a 15-year in process situation. We're going to get it done. And you'll notice again, like the zoo, some of these things where you might go, hey, we have neighborhood needs, and you're looking at things like the Performing Arts Center or the zoo, and that feels potentially frivolous. I want to emphasize that those are city-owned properties and that our city, for revenue and money for other things, is almost completely reliant on sales tax. So we need those things to generate revenue for the other things, and we definitely need to maintain and repair those. And then something that's pretty exciting under the Housing and Neighborhoods Fund is there's some support for just overall housing initiatives. And then in the neighborhood revitalization section, I have it broken out. There's different groups that are part of vibrant neighborhood partnerships that are going to be getting funds to improve, but there's going to be more opportunities, especially with the city's restructured department, to advocate for different neighborhood efforts and things you'd like to see. So within this package, there's going to be space for streets and sidewalks and a lot of things that can definitely improve neighborhood conditions. And in the past, the cities had small area plans when they look at how to address a neighborhood. They're going to be shifting towards a neighborhood conditions index instead. That'll be more about prioritizing what conditions are affecting quality of life in a neighborhood most significantly to prioritize focusing on those. So that's kind of what's going on within that. There are some spots where some of that, if there are like some one-way roads that don't even have a pull-off area. So if a fire truck has to go around, that's a need. But yes, I would argue we should finish widening Yale and see how it looks, or then, yeah, that one's not my line item, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, those are conversations that are worth having. And that's why I also emphasize it's absolutely a draft. And I think what's gonna be really important, because at the end of the day, once this package is fully agreed on, gets voted on by the council, you all are gonna get to vote on it in August. And so your voices and what you wanna see or don't want to see in it really matter, because the city needs to take that seriously because you're the voters. I believe, man, sorry, it's shifted around a little bit. We're doing these sessions. I believe it's going to be finalized and voted on by the council by the end of May. That way we can make sure it's on the ballot August 8th. Is the plan. That part of, so what you'd be voting on, it's not a tax increase, but it'll be generated by sustaining a tax that we already have. So you'll be voting to be like, yep, we should keep. Yep, exactly. Yep. Some of it is gearing up for, and the Route 66 Commission's definitely been advocating. We're about to have the centennial of Route 66 in 2026, and yeah, 2026. And we're one of the cities best positioned to really capitalize on the tourism of that, which again is a good revenue generator and also a great opportunity for 11th as an arterial street to really have investment put into it. So that's definitely part of what's there when it comes to the street and streetscaping. But there is also separate revenue through, especially around Mother Road Market, there's a TIF there and some other things that'll generate separate revenue from that to improve that area too. But yeah, you're gonna definitely see continued investment on that Route 66 corridor. So that's pretty exciting. I know I just went over a bunch of kind of granular municipal information. If there's anything you all ever need from me or have questions about, please don't hesitate to contact me, especially through my email, because it's not just me that's in that inbox. It's also my council aide, Casey, who's excellent. And she used to be actually Blake Ewing's council aide and moved back within the past few months to come back to the council. So she has some good historical knowledge and she's really quick and responsive. So that's my email's dist4, DIST4 @tulsacouncil.org. And as mentioned, if you put in a complaint through 311 and you're not seeing action on it within a amount of time that you thought would have been reasonable, I'll just leave that up to your judgment and discretion and probably regret saying that later. But anyway, if you put in that 311 complaint and you're concerned about seeing action on it, please let me know and email me and say, hey, I put in this 311 complaint about this thing, because then I can help follow up and make sure it gets moving for you. Really grateful for you all in your neighborhood organizing and advocacy. It's groups like this that make a huge difference in communities in the city and is a big part of why I ran for office. So I'm grateful for you all. Thank you. Great.